The reason mothers and children say don't tell your father is because dad can't handle his emotions, right?
Oh my God, yes.
Right? And then what we see with boys, if they can't handle the discomfort of their emotions, they will not reach their potential at school. Because feedback, negative feedback, as we talked about, it doesn't feel good, but you need it to improve.
Hello, and welcome to Habit Nerd, a podcast show that knows that few things can have a more powerful impact on your life than improving your daily systems, habits, and mindset. I'm your host, Dr. Bree Hurn, a multi-passionate researcher, lecturer, speaker, and coach. Once a perfectionist who was always busy but not necessarily effective, I overcame illness and burnout and am now obsessed with sharing the science and systems for working with efficiency and habits for abundant health in your mind and your body. Each week, my guests and I share stories and lessons backed by research. So let's buckle up and dive straight into today's empowering conversation. Hello, Habit Nerds, and a very warm welcome to today's episode. It is my great delight to welcome a highly esteemed author, Kasey Edwards. Now, Kasey is a leading Australian columnist and best-selling author of 10 books. She mixes humour, heart, and credible research to write about issues like raising children, work satisfaction, motherhood, and body image. She has a wide readership with an audience of over, can you believe this, 10 million worldwide, and she is a passionate champion for women and children. Today we're focusing specifically on Kasey's latest book. It's a memoir titled Goodbye Girl, Hello Me. As Kasey researched how to raise her own girls to like themselves, she began to realize how the toxic rules many of us learned, like in ignore our own boundaries so that we don't hurt the feelings of others, that were taught to us in our childhood, were continually reinforced throughout her life. So by identifying and critically examining these ingrained rules, Kasey was able to reparent herself in middle age and rewrite these rules to serve her better as an adult woman. Now, Kasey has weaved together credible academic research, which is a big win for me and the listeners of the Habit Nerd podcast, her expert advice and life-changing revelations with practical strategies. In this memoir, Kasey powerfully crafts a testament to the idea that we deserve more than what we've been taught to accept. Now, Kasey, as somebody who's a woman myself and a girl mum, I know I'm going to have a wide readership and listenership of people who are highly engaged in this very important topic. So a warm welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Bree. It's such a delight to talk to you. Hi, everybody.
All right, let's get into our questions, Kasey. We always start with the same one on the Habit Nerd podcast, and that is, what is a habit that serves you, that helps you show up as the person that you would like to be?
Great question. I love this question. And my answer is I have one habit that has really changed everything for me. I would not have the career that I have without it. And it is to remind myself daily that criticism is inevitable, but I get to choose how much power I give it.
Wow, that is the first time we've heard such a habit on the Habit Nerd podcast. I'd love you to break that open more for us, Kasey.
Yeah, okay. So, as you said, this is my 10th book. And so my first book came out in 2017, and I was very naive about what was going to happen to me as a published woman, particular, right? The
Right.
research shows that women get far more criticism than men, female writers. And so the very first day my book came out, I got an email from a reader. And I was so excited to get this email because it was like someone I didn't know had read my book. And I opened it and it said, the best thing I can say about your book is that it is expensive toilet paper. And I
Oh,
was so gutted when I got that.
absolutely. What a horrible thing to
I know,
say.
but that was just the beginning. It
Okay.
has been a non-stop barrage of criticism. Like I
Right.
have received so much criticism over the years, I could wallpaper my whole house with it.
Right.
And sometimes it's about my work, but often it's about my appearance. It's about how desirable people find me. That's a polite way of putting it. They criticize
Casey, gross.
my husband, and it really, really used to affect me. There was a
Mm.
time when I thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to stop. And it would just, some days I would get into bed and I just wouldn't be able to get out of bed.
Oh.
And then it was actually Brene Brown's work who
Mm-hmm.
helped me with this,
Okay. What aspect?
understanding that criticism is inevitable
Mm-hmm.
if you choose to live a bold, authentic life,
Mm.
right? So anybody who does anything out of the ordinary is going to get criticized.
Mm-hmm.
And so that made me realize that I actually have a choice here, because I felt so disempowered that all these
Yes.
people were doing this to me.
Right.
And then I thought, no, hang on, I get to choose what sort of life I want to live. So, for example, this interview that we're having right now, Bree, guaranteed there's going to be at least one person who doesn't like it, and who
Yes.
doesn't
Yes.
like me, and who doesn't like you, and
Yes.
doesn't like my book, right?
Yes.
I had a choice to make this morning, right? Because the only way I could guarantee that I wouldn't be criticized for doing this interview was not do it. So I had to decide, do I want to live the life that I choose and show up and talk to you and talk to your audience? Or do I want to be scared and not face criticism and not do it? And so once I realized that criticism was inevitable and I had a choice whether or not I was going to live the life that would invite criticism, then it just shifted things for me. And it was like, yeah, okay, bring it on. That's just the price I pay for living the life that I want to live. And so that doesn't mean it made it easy all of a sudden. When I say that I get to choose how much power I give it,
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is that I decided that people have to earn the right for me to listen to them.
Mm.
And again, this comes back to Brene Brown's work. I was inspired by her, and I came up with 3 criteria that
Okay.
somebody has to meet
Okay.
for me to listen to their criticism.
What are they?
And the first one is that they also have to show up, right? It is the easiest thing in the world to sit behind your keyboard and sling mud and do
Yes.
nothing yourself and risk nothing yourself.
Yes.
And you don't even have to be in the public eye. It's the easiest thing in the world to criticize the mums at school for organizing the fundraiser when
Yes.
you've done nothing yourself.
When you're not part of the committee. Yes.
That's
Yes.
right. So if you're not showing up, you don't get a say.
Yes. Yes.
That's my first one.
Totally. I
And-
recognize the man in the arena here. We
Yeah,
can talk about this a bit
exactly,
later. Yes, that's a perfect first one.
And once you cut those people out, well, that's 99% of people, right?
Who aren't showing up.
Yes.
Yes,
exactly.
yes.
Right. And so then the second one is what's their motivation for criticizing me?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's 4 reasons that people criticize. They do it to hurt me. They do it to silence us. That's a very common one for women, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do it to make fun of us, or they do it to help us.
Okay.
And if they are not genuinely trying to help me, then they also they haven't earned the right for me to listen to them.
Yes. Okay. So that's
And
number
then
2.
The third one is, do they know what they're talking about?
Mm.
Do I respect them?
Yeah.
Why would
Yeah.
I?
Who's giving the criticism?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Would I listen to them if they were my friend, or would I
Yep.
listen to them if they were my family member? Yeah.
would I take advice from them? And if I wouldn't, well, then why on earth would I take criticism from them, right?
Yeah.
And so I have, again, copying Brene Brown. She's not my only inspiration here, but
Yeah, she's a very significant one, though. Absolutely.
Yeah, I have a card in my wallet,
Mm-hmm.
and I have the names of people who have earned the right to be listened to.
Wow.
And if your readers are interested in this strategy, I actually have created a card with the criteria that you can just download and print out yourself. It really helps me a lot. I have it on the desks of my children, and we talk about it.
Oh, I love that.
And it's just that idea that we actually have power here. We get to choose who we listen to. And for me, that really changes everything about the way how courageous I am to be
Mm.
a writer, but or just to be my authentic self.
Yeah. Oh, wow, Kasey, I couldn't love that more. I've got a couple of follow-up questions.
Yeah, go.
How much, I really love that you've made the distinction about helping your children with it at the end. I think this is, the domain of criticism is something I feel like if I am feeling particularly strong and am able to conceptualize it in some of the ways that you just have, some of that is based on the strength of experience and, being old enough and kind of getting to a stage where I'm wise enough to care less because, impressionable young people, other people's opinions mean a lot more, don't they? So I really love that the list that that you have yourself in your wallet and also that you share with your own children is front and center. Is it fair to say to young people and to ourselves that we don't like everyone, so why would we expect everybody to like us?
Absolutely, for
Mm,
sure. And that also, I mean, I know that as you get older, it does become easier,
mm,
but it is also a skill. And so we learn that skill through the experience of life. We can
yes,
shortcut that for our kids
yes.
and help them front load that skill for them. And
Mm,
just one example is we have a saying, and I write about it in in our books, Raising Girls Who Like Themselves and in Bringing Up Boys.
hmm.
And we have taught it to my girls, and it's the giraffe.
Okay.
And it is, if someone calls you a giraffe, does that make you a giraffe?
Mm,
Right. And so when they come to me and say, Sally said I'm a baby because I took my doll to school, and I was like, well, if Sally said you were a giraffe, would that
yes.
make you a giraffe? And
Mm,
then they laugh and then they get it. And you follow up with, you get to decide who you are and if that's okay.
mm,
And I'll just give you an example of how that worked. So a while ago, my little one was walking home from school at the tender age of 7,
mm.
and she was telling me that she had a tricky day because
Okay.
somebody, another girl, told all the girls at school that she was dumb.
Right.
And in that moment I felt it because
Oh, God.
it's like, oh, I
What a
was back in that
trigger. Yeah.
playground too. And then she puts her hands on her hips, she lets out this really big sigh and goes, so I'm going to have to sort that out tomorrow.
Oh, I love that.
And
I have some work to do tomorrow on this. Yes. How
it's
gorgeous.
reason she sees it like that is because we have spent her whole life front loading those skills that
Mm,
she gets to decide if she's okay. Is it the truth that someone
mm,
says? Have
mm.
they earned the right to be listened to?
Yeah, oh my goodness. That's yeah, the are you a giraffe is such a kind of simple tip, and I can imagine that would be effective for children, really little children, because they know they're not a giraffe. So,
Oh,
that's
yes,
it.
they're not a giraffe. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And also just because somebody says it doesn't make it true, I really love that idea that have they earned the respect? Have they earned, the spot on the list to be able to, give the feedback that you might listen to? I've heard you've reminded me of Brene Brown's work, as in, a bold and authentic life. I've heard it also conceptualized as new level, new devil. So when you get to a certain level, it's like you will attract more of the devils. But in some ways, that's because you're showing people something that is missing in themselves, or that, you don't make them feel good because you might have taken a brave step to publish a book, show up on social media, whatever it is. That's certainly something I've had to coach myself in, that the wider the reach goes. I've received criticism over my voice a couple of times.
Oh,
And
I get it all the time. It's
yeah,
totally sexism.
isn't it? Isn't it? And it's
Of course.
interesting because I've heard it from both women and men. So I've certainly thought about, I wonder whether there's a sexist angle. And I think it still is, even when it does come from
Yeah.
women. But it's, I've heard myself described as I've just sucked on helium. It's interesting though. I was talking to my girls about that, and, they were sort of laughing and saying, oh, that's so mean. But I said, I can't actually do anything about my voice. So there's not really anything, there's no point in giving weight to something like that. This is unchangeable for me. And, it's sort of it's their problem more than my problem. Empower them to turn me down or to not listen to the podcast or block me on social media. That's okay.
Yeah, I think that fits into the category of criticism to try to silence you.
Literally silence me.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And because what do they say? It's high pitched. Well, what's high pitched? The female voice.
Women.
Yeah?
Yes.
We
yes.
like deep voices. Why? Because they're more masculine.
And more commanding, or they've earned the respect or the kudos to be able to show up in this way. My last question about this is, do you think that's, and I hate this, I love the Australian culture for so many reasons, but something I do find problematic when you do, spend time with other cultures, is that there is an Australianism about tall poppy syndrome and bringing people down, that it's certainly not everyone. And I feel like, the more evolved we're getting, the more we can kind of call that out or realize it for what it is. But in your research, has that come up as something more common in Australia than in other places?
Certainly for women. And there's two good girl beliefs that play into that.
Okay.
And the first one is that a good girl should never get too big for her boots.
Right, yes.
And it is so deep within us.
Yes. Who do you think you are?
Should not want attention.
Right.
Now, it is normal, developmentally appropriate for us as girls to want as much attention as boys. But we are shamed for wanting attention in so many ways. You're a show off, you're an attention seeker, quiet down. Like, we're rewarded for being quiet. And so that is within us, but it's also, we carry those beliefs and we put them on other people, on other women. And I see that particularly the way we talk about women online. They're influencers, right?
Yeah, yes.
What are men? They're content creators.
Yes, so true.
Okay, so influencer, it's narcissistic, it's superficial.
Money grabbing.
Exactly. It's women who are being successful but are too big for their boots.
Yes,
right?
And how dare they?
Yeah. So there's that one, that idea that women should never get too big for our boots. And the other one, which I think is even more toxic and really damages us, is the belief that we are taught, I'm only good enough if I'm better than her.
Right.
And female competition is taught to us as soon as we take our first breath. We have, who's the prettiest girl? The cutest baby. There aren't beauty pageants for boys, are there? And then we go to ballet and you're the prettiest girl on the stage. And then as we get older, we're taught that it's normal. It's fairy tales, Cinderella, the women are competing with each other for the man. And so we're taught that we have to bring another woman down in order to feel good about ourselves.
Right.
And it's so toxic, because the thing is that, well, you can't always be the best person in the room, right?
No.
And if you need to be better than other women to feel good about yourself, then you are by definition insecure.
Yes.
Because you can't control that. They're external measures. But it's also, we can't be friends with other women if we have to be better than them to feel good about ourselves.
Yes.
And if we deny ourselves friendship, we are denying ourselves one of the most life-affirming parts of being.
That's right, a life force, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Why is it, do you think, that girls have to compete with other girls? When I'm just thinking about, because you're exactly right, if I think back to my teaching background, it was very rare that you would call a boy an attention seeker. It was more the domain of girls. She's seeking attention. The other thing that comes to mind in terms of context is when you go to a sporting presentation or celebration, the sorts of things that we say about girls and celebrate, and they got the award for this compared to what the boys get the award for. Often there's, terms like, this girl's always polite, this girl always puts others before herself, this girl's happy to, play in any position, this girl, and then when you hear the boys' presentation, speeches, it's things like, this boy shows heart, this boy is resilient, this boy is a team player, so, and the other place that shows up, which really boils my blood, is on school reports, the first line, Jessica is, conscientious, quiet, and then it might be Jack has worked really hard this year. He, even that first line is always something. As a school leader, I was always catching because, probably with my feminist hat on and a mum of girls and whatever. And the more I thought about this, the more it kind of really got under my skin. But as I think about it now, is it because boys play more team sport and it's almost that kind of let's lift each other up as a collective? The team player means that you put in, but your mates will help you out, etc. Whereas girls, it's sort of more that dog eat dog, individualistic message.
I think it's more basic than that.
Okay.
I think that at a fundamental level, boys are worthy for existing,
Okay.
and girls are worthy for their service
Yeah.
and for the approval seeking of other people. So boys are more likely to have an internal locus of control.
Yes.
They get to decide if they're good enough and if they're awesome. Whereas we are constantly looking outside of ourselves to decide that. We look out for, well, is someone calling me a good girl? Have I got a gold star, a pat on the head, right? Am I the prettiest girl on the stage? Am I the best behaved girl in the class? Then we go to the number on the scales or the size on the back of our jeans or the man who picked us, everything. And that's what I realized when I was writing Goodbye Good Girl is if you look at the core beliefs that we are taught to be good girls and good women, every single one of those gives our power away to another person or to an external source.
Yeah, my goodness, that's so true. Really blowing my mind there, Kasey. And I know our listeners will be really reflecting, men and women are listening, hoping, I'm hoping that both men and women listen is what I should have said. It's very much a reflection on ourselves as kids and that little person within us, and also where that's showing up as an adult. If you think of like that body and then like a smaller version of yourself within that body, what that is now conceptualized as in our adult body working around, and the way we are seeing the world, and the world view that we take.
That's right. And it's really difficult to identify those beliefs in ourselves because it's in the air that we breathe and it's just what you've always known. But what happened to me was when I was researching and writing Raising Girls Who Like Themselves, I was looking at it through a different lens. I was looking at it as, how do I want to raise my daughter and how do I want other people to raise their daughters? And basically what it is what beliefs are they going to learn if I don't intervene?
Yeah, what a great question.
What do we need to save our girls from believing that is going to make them feel inadequate for the rest of their lives? And so when I identified them in what I wanted to save my girls from, I thought, oh my God, they're all in me. And then I could fly back over the timeline of my life and see where I learnt them as a little girl. And that's the process that I went through in my own journey of saying goodbye to my own good girl, is you go back to that moment. And when you're 6 or whatever, that key moment, and you say, what could I tell little Kasey now that she couldn't possibly have known then that would have changed everything for her? And an example of that is in my family, being skinny was very important.
Right.
The folk law in my family, the legend, was that my grandfather married my grandma because her waist was so tiny he could fit his hands around it. Right. And so I would be weighed on the scales and there'd be a conversation about weight and waist and my desirability. And at 7 years old, I was not able to think that the hand span to waist ratio was not the best foundation for a relationship, right? I didn't know that.
Of course
but
not.
Now when I go back as an adult, it's like, that is nuts.
Wow.
And then once you can identify what you learned, how you learned it, and how it doesn't make sense for you in your life anymore, you can choose a new belief. And that's a really important part of that, Bree, which I got wrong for a long time. You can't just say, I don't want to believe that anymore. You have to replace it with a new belief.
Okay, can you give us an example?
Consciously.
So let's talk about the weight one, for example.
Yeah, okay. So my new belief was that my self-worth was based on things that I can control. Because weight and beauty, in many respects, is an external measure.
Yes.
Someone else decides your beauty.
Yes.
And someone else gets to take it away. I have no control over that.
Yeah, in the eye of the beholder, absolutely.
So my self-worth has to be based on things that I choose and I can control, like my character and the decisions I make every day to be the sort of person that I want to be.
Yeah, that's a really powerful, quite simple but powerful, and it's, a little bit like my example before. You've said it in a different way. If people are criticizing my voice, realizing that that's not something that, I hadn't heard that criticism until I showed up online. People may have thought it, but they weren't saying it to me. And then realizing, getting to a stage after a day of feeling a bit bruised by it, that, oh, I actually can't do anything about that. So maybe my attention's better used somewhere where I can, make a positive impact. So as you've said, if I, make an effort to be kind, to show integrity, to, make people feel good after they've interacted with me, as opposed to, the shame that I'm feeling from, that sort of criticism online, it's really empowering, I think, to be able to go, oh no, I can control that story. So yeah, what a great example.
And another little habit hack that I have, and I write about it in Goodbye Good Girl, Hello Me, is that I call it my fig jam list, as in, fuck, I'm good, just ask me.
Yeah.
And it's on my phone.
Okay.
And I write on that list things that I have done and that I'm proud of and what that means to me. And this is different from gratitude, because gratitude is very often passive.
Yes, yes.
Gifts that people bestow on you or the universe bestows on you. It's like, no, this is something that I've done.
Right, yes.
And it can be as simple as, I went to the gym today when I really didn't want to.
Yeah.
And what that says is I'm looking after my health. Right? Or I stood up for someone today. And what that means is that I'm a good person who cares about other people. Right? And I add to that list regularly, and I read it daily. Sometimes when I'm feeling a little bit wobbly, I will read it 5 times a day. And what it does is I fill my head with all the things that I can control about me and all the things that empower me. And it's almost like there's just not space for all the negative thoughts.
Thank you for adding that last bit. I was going to ask a question. You've followed that up really well around, do you need to add evidence to the new belief to make it actually land for yourself? So, all well and good for us to train ourselves and, mentor our girls to say, create a new belief. If you're going to interrogate and break the old belief, you need to create a new belief for yourself. And what you've just done with that answer is telling me the evidence that is then perpetuating the new belief and supporting the new belief is the list that you're creating and adding to.
Yes.
So I've just written lists down, because my earlier question I want to come back to is the list of people that you are keeping and that you're sharing with your girls and getting them to do the same around the people who are worthy of giving you feedback. Do you add to that? Is that an iterative list? Yeah.
Like, I've now got names written all around the edges.
Yeah, right. And the girls as well.
Validating, because often we think about the people in our lives who don't like us, disappoint us, and even in our own families, right? But once you've got that list, you go, wow, I've got some really good people in my life, and I need to spend more time prioritizing them rather than focusing on the people who don't fill my bucket.
Oh, what a great reminder. Yeah. I mean, it's ingrained, it's human nature that we, if I ever do something, a keynote or something, and I ask for feedback, I'll get 99 responses about, how impactful it was. And the one person that didn't like my work, that's where my attention goes. And, that's the thing that I think about next time. And, so it really is about ingraining in myself that belief that the 99 over here are probably more worthy of listening to because I can do more about that. Sometimes, but the other thing I do want to say is sometimes if criticism is helpful and it's done in a kind way and it is, that doesn't always need to be thrown out either. It's just about conceptualizing who gave it, what they've said, and what you want to do with it. Is that fair to
Sure,
say?
absolutely. Like criticism, constructive criticism is really important.
Mm,
And it still doesn't feel good. But if it is done in a way that is genuinely trying to help you, then yeah, that is worth listening to.
mm.
I give my work to my husband to read, and it comes back and it doesn't feel good when it's covered in
No,
red. But
no.
he's doing that with love, and he's
Yes.
a very good editor, so I trust him. And he has my
A-
best interest at heart. So
and he is on your list as someone who is allowed to criticize you because
that's
he is
right.
showing up, in a myriad of ways himself, going back to your first habit of deciding who is able to, give that criticism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you said, we can spend so much time on the really negative, really hurtful, really unproductive
Yeah.
criticism
Yes.
that we don't even get to the productive criticism.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. It's like there's not enough space in our brain for it. Yeah. Kasey, we understand habits to be something that becomes automatic, that it's a settled tendency. Would you say that, and you've started by saying your habit is, which as I said, I love it because it's novel. We've not heard that before, deciding who is allowed to criticize you based on that framework that you've created. Is that something that is now fairly automatic for you, or is it still a work in progress?
Oh, it's mostly automatic.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone said to me the other day, like I got some really, really cruel feedback and I laughed. And someone said, how can you just laugh at that? And
Mm.
then I thought back to the person I used to be, like a few years ago, and it would have gutted me.
Yeah, what a great
And
celebration to be able to see how
yes,
far you've come.
but I'm not Teflon. And,
No.
like sometimes it does penetrate me, but
Yes.
mostly I really genuinely don't care. But
Mm.
also, I think what I am getting better at is catching myself when it does matter. And so, an example is when Raising Girls Who Like Themselves came out the first day, a shock jock in Sydney got on, told a million of his listeners that I was an idiot, the book was rubbish, and
Stop.
they shouldn't buy it. And in that moment, I felt it was like, oh my God, like, what if I am an idiot? What if it is rubbish? Like, I went back to that old way of thinking. And then I
Of
thought,
course.
hang on a minute. Like, I can't control the first thought I get, but I can choose my second one, right? And
Okay.
it was like, is he trying to help me? No. He's slagging me off for ratings. Do I trust him? No. And does he show up? It's like, yes, he shows up to slag me off on radio, but hasn't done anything to try to help people raise their children to like themselves.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, why would I give him my power? Why would I
Mm.
let him ruin my day?
Yeah.
And that was enough to stop that thought and just get on with the rest of my day. And years ago, that would have triggered a downward spiral for me.
Absolutely. Oh, that's a tricky one. I think I mean, and, I think I'm amazed and, so impressed that you've been able to, go through that spiral of thought and arrive where you have. My goodness, though, I would just want to email that shock jock and just say, just in case you don't know, the impact of those words, which are your words in your opinion, with your highly engaged listenership, for somebody, you had the best of intentions, your book is excellent work, and it's going to land in the ears of many readers, in the eyes of many readers, in the ears of many listeners. Who is he to cut that potential off?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of hymns. I hear from them
Yeah,
daily.
really?
Yes.
Well, I hope all of the hims that are listening and the hers that are listening are going to approach anybody's work with a sense of open-mindedness and kindness, and just that idea that anybody on any given day is doing the best that with what they have. So,
Yes.
surely I often say that to my kids, and that's something that I've come to later in life probably as well, that if you look at things like everybody's genuinely trying to do the best that they can, it lightens the load on myself as well as hopefully on anybody that, I interact with and, wow.
So true for motherhood. Like I
Mm,
really don't like when mothers joke about being a bad mother because
yeah.
it's like I have never met a mother who hasn't been turning herself inside out to be the very best mother that she can be, right?
Mm, yeah, there's no question. It's like I heard it said once, there is not one mother in the world that wakes up and says, I wonder how many of my kids' lives I can ruin today. It
Yes.
just is not part of the DNA of somebody
Yeah.
who's a mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Hi, Habit Nerd listeners. Have I got a treat for you? The brand new Gen AI productivity system has been created by well-known behavioral science consultancy Inventium. And get ready, because this course will change the way you work. No more endless to-do lists and time-wasting tasks. This course shows you how to leverage the power of generative AI to become more productive and to get things done better than ever before. It covers so much, including prompting hacks, Gen AI for writing and creativity, Gen AI for meetings and analysing data, just to name a few. I've done the self-paced course, learned a huge amount, and I know that I will save myself hours and hours in the week now. Habit Nerds, this is a game changer for working smarter in ways you didn't even think were possible. To get started now, you will find a unique link in the show notes of this episode. And in even better news, there is a 10% discount code for Habit Nerd listeners with the code BREE10. Generative AI is the future of work and of working with way more efficiency. Can you afford to be left behind? Wow. Wow. We've gone really deep on that first question there. The second question is always, what is the system that you have for trying to keep that habit in place? How do you maintain the habit of avoiding criticism or of conceptualizing criticism as, thinking about whether you're going to accept it or not?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, it's very material. I actually have a physical card in my wallet. And
Yes.
I think
Yep.
that really grounds me.
Mm-hmm.
But it also, at my core, the journey that I have been on is that it's my life. So I always have the power to choose
Mm,
how I respond to things that happen in my life.
mm,
There are many things in the world that I would like to change, right?
yes.
Many things. And
Yes.
there are many situations that happen that I would prefer didn't happen to me and didn't happen to other people.
Yes.
I can't control that, but I can always control the way I respond to them.
Mm, yeah. That's such a powerful reminder. I mean, we hear that often, but I think just the repetitive nature of being able to put the reps in and tell ourselves that is so important that, our response is our responsibility.
A really easy and simple way to explain this to kids, because
Hmm.
again, you can get in early and build
Yeah.
front load this skill. We call
Yes.
it in our books the power perspective.
Okay.
Get them to look through a window with a fly screen,
Right.
and they can focus on that fly screen, and that is all they see.
Mm-hmm.
Dirt, dead bugs, grime, and
Mm-hmm.
constraint, right? Just by choosing, they can shift their focus and look beyond that to a whole world of possibilities. And just a really tangible example, sports day. One of
Mm-hmm.
my daughters is not particularly athletic. She doesn't want to go.
Mm-hmm.
She would much rather stay home. And I was like, no, you have to go, because
Mm-hmm.
we know that avoidance makes anxiety worse, right?
Yeah.
You
Yep.
have to go. It's part of the school curriculum, but
Yes.
you get to choose what sort of day you're going to have. You
Okay.
can look at that fly screen and you can think of all the things that you're not going to like, and notice and focus on the things that you don't like. Or you can choose to focus on the good things that are going to happen today. You're going to be sitting outside in the fresh air. You're going to be with your friends. There's going to be lollies.
Maybe some fun snacks. Yep.
That's right. And you can choose a good day.
Your
That
attention can go
power
there.
is within you.
Yeah. Oh wow, what a simple I really like the fly screen. I think that's easier for kids then because obviously as adults we know that phrase, see the forest for the trees. It's kind of like, are you focusing on the tree in front of you or are you looking at the potential of the whole forest and whatever. But yeah, And I also like that because I think it would be gaslighting children to say that we can control everything all the time. That, you do go to school and, school will have subjects that you don't like or that you don't feel particularly strong in. Sports days, the science fair, the
The
whatever
kids
it
you sit next
is,
to.
the kid you sit next to, even the teacher sometimes, for a given year. So, um, yeah, I think that's really helpful because as I say, there's no point saying, "Oh, just turn up and be happy and smile," because that's inauthentic and that's not sort of valuing where they are. And it's also that's a lovely lesson to teach kids around kind of that power of if what you appreciate appreciates, if you lean into the fact that you'll spend some time sitting with the kids on the sideline and having a joke with them, you might come last in your race. But if you look more favorably and put more power into the fun and the hand claps and, the singing the chants and enjoying the lollies with your friends, then you will look for more of that and you will sort of train your neural pathways as a general rule to be able to look for more of that in life, sports day or not sports day.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. How lovely. Now, Kasey, what's a habit that isn't currently aligned with how you're trying to show up in the world? It's a vulnerable question, but we've all got one.
It's interesting because I had this conversation just at the beginning of the week with my mentor,
Mm-hmm.
Caroline Cameron. She is a coach. And my habit is that yes comes out of my mouth before my brain engages.
In what the question is
Yeah,
asking of
I
you.
say yes,
Yeah.
please. I'm
Yeah.
always, and that's my good girl conditioning.
Yeah. I was going to say, where does that come
Always the
from?
first
Yeah.
person to help, to put myself out, to volunteer to do things. And Caroline said to me, just because you can doesn't mean you
You
should.
should. Yeah.
And so, of course, I still want to be a good person and I
Mm.
absolutely value contribution to the community.
Mm.
And I do think that that is part of the reason behind boys and men's poor mental health. Women and girls are actively encouraged to help, to make connections, and to contribute. And boys and men are encouraged to be individualistic. And so we see that with little kids, right? Boys and girls both want to help mom in the kitchen the same
Mm.
amount.
Yes.
By the time they get older, girls are still helping and boys are not.
Yes.
And we look at some dads who the kids have never seen dad do anything other than for himself. Like he hasn't even flipped a sausage at a school barbecue, right? But we know that helping other people is critical to our well-being.
Mm.
So, yeah, I still want to help other people. I want to model that for children, but I also need to consider my own needs and my own boundaries. So that's why.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I feel like that would be a really common one. It is in the fabric of our, upbringing. It is the good girl that we all have in us. I can see that's a tricky one though, because as you just said at the end of that answer, you get positive feedback from flipping the sausages at the Bunnings barbecue and helping out at the school and, helping a friend move. And, because we are social beings and because we're connected, particularly to other women, when we see that we're helpful, when we see that, the meal that we made, our friend before they went into surgery and, when we picked up our friends' kids when it really didn't suit us to, but we kind of fit it in because it helped them out. The thank you that we get is almost reinforcing that pattern of a good girl. So I can see how that's tricky to unpick, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I feel like there's a distinction, and it's in the way I feel. Kindness that is good for me, the right amount of kindness fills my bucket, and I feel
Mm-hmm.
good about that.
Mm-hmm.
The wrong amount makes me feel resentful. And whenever I feel resentful, I realize that that's on me. That's not the other person. That's
Mm.
because I said yes when
That
I
yes should have been a
it
no.
should have been a
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think that's a really great distinction there to kind of tune into when you say, oh my God, I really wish I hadn't have said yes to this. I don't have time. Why is it always me? Then it's, oh, that's quite a toxic pattern to be
yeah.
able
Or
to
I give this
catch.
much and I don't get anything back. Well, that's on me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. And can you just break open a little bit more about the risk of, young men's mental health as opposed to young women because of that pattern. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
So we hear a lot about boys and loneliness
Mm-hmm.
and boys and a lack of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And it really worries me that the debate at the moment is just on screens. You
Yes.
think, oh, screens are the problem. No,
Yes.
that first of all, the evidence does not support that. People are
Yes.
looking for the evidence. They have not
Yes.
found it. It is just
Yes.
a myth that we're getting carried away with. So
Yes.
we're putting
Yes.
all of our attention in dealing with screens when what's actually going on with our boys is that they are not being encouraged to be connected to their communities.
Mm-hmm.
But the other big problem with boys is that they are not being encouraged to experience the full range of emotions. And so we talk in our boys' books about strength of character.
Mm-hmm.
And the key to strength of character is emotional bravery. And that is about being able to deal with the discomfort of your own emotions.
Mm.
And and this has been going on for a very long time. The reason mothers and children say don't tell your father is because dad can't handle his emotions, right?
Oh my God, yes.
Right. And then what we see with boys, if they can't handle the discomfort of their emotions, they will not reach their potential at school. Because negative feedback, as we talked about, it doesn't feel good, but you need it to improve. So if they can't handle that discomfort, they shut down. And we hear, so often I hear from parents, my boy's lazy. There is no such thing as a boy's laziness gene. What there is boys opting out because they can't deal with the discomfort of their emotions of failing.
That is a bombshell. Yeah, and particularly that don't tell dad. It's almost like we're protecting our kids from the response that they'll receive from dad because dad will fly off the handle instead of be able to, go, oh, I don't like the way that happened. Let's talk through that. It's like, yeah, he might yell or throw something or, get really upset. Yeah, wow.
So when Chris, my husband, we started writing Bringing Up Boys Who Like Themselves because we didn't have boys. So we are the parents of girls, which was why we wrote Raising Girls First. Because we
Mm-hmm.
didn't have boys, we emailed 15,000 parents and we said, what's your biggest worry about bringing up boys?
Mm-hmm.
And the number one worry was that they didn't want to raise their boy to be tough. They knew they didn't want tough. But they were worried that if they didn't raise him to be tough, he would be weak. And that if they had to choose between the two, tough is better than weak, right? So, but if there are, for the boy parents listening to this, here is the good news. Tough and weak are the same side, are different sides of the same coin. Making your boy tough is actually making him weak. I'll explain that in a moment. What we need instead is strong. And real strength is being able to handle your emotions, right?
Full spectrum of emotion.
So what are tough boys? Like tough boys don't apologize. Because what are they doing? They are offloading their negative feelings onto someone else. If tough men end up with an addiction because they can't face their emotion, so they escape from it.
Yeah, so they self-medicate with something.
That's right. Tough boys don't express their feelings. Therefore, they can never have an intimate connection with anyone, a boy or a man.
Because they can't access that level of emotion.
You can't actually have a meaningful relationship with a person if you don't let that person see your authentic self.
Yes, yes.
And so that makes them brittle. So what we need to be aiming for is raising strong boys, and strong boys have emotional bravery. And just here's a hack. Actually, I'll give it to you. It's an emotion wheel. It's in our boys' book, but I'll give it to you for your show notes if you like.
Fantastic.
One of the problems with boys is that they can't name their emotions.
Right.
A lot of boys and men can only name 3 emotions: happy, sad, and angry.
Okay.
The research shows that if you can accurately name what you're feeling, and it has to be accurate, then you can go most of the way to resolving that feeling. Now, we know we do this instinctively as women. So when we catch up with our friends and we talk about a fight we had with our partner, or we talk about our bad day, or how embarrassed we were about something that happened in work, what are we doing? We are accurately naming how we feel to a safe person, and then we walk away and we feel so much better, right? We need to support our boys to accurately name their emotion. So I have an emotion wheel, print it out, put it on your fridge. So when your boy comes home and he's angry, is he angry or is he jealous? Is he embarrassed?
Is he disappointed?
Yeah. And you have to encourage him to identify what he's feeling and name it. And then our job as parents is to be their safe person. And that means be okay with whatever they tell you. If you try to shut it down, if you judge them or shame them, it doesn't work. Every emotion is normal and okay and valid. What's not is often how we deal with that emotion, but the actual emotion needs to be supported.
And that makes a boy strong and not tough, because the strength and the power in articulating exactly how you feel and having the language to hang on that, and to be able to say, I didn't get picked on the soccer team today at lunchtime, and I felt a bit embarrassed because people were looking at me and I didn't like the feeling of being looked at, and people feeling sorry for me, so that's, instead of I was angry.
Yeah, exactly. And then, because anger is often one of the only emotions boys feel they're allowed to express.
Right, because it's a masculine leaning emotion.
The research shows that you go most of the way. You shortcut the link between the event and anger.
Right.
Find accurately naming the emotion.
Right, yeah. I mean, we've got that's a really, I look forward to receiving the wheel. I think that's really powerful reminder, and I hope, that lots of my audience really tap into that as a resource, or, look for your books. It's something that is the domain of education, because, I know early childhood teachers do a lot of work in play, for example, and, getting boys and girls, but, if we're talking about boys, to be able to express emotion when things get difficult, or, be able to use the words. What's tricky about it is that the language level of little children often doesn't match the experience. And so I think that's where us as parents, as these boys develop, we need to keep doing that work. As their language develops and their conceptualization of the world develops, we need to be able to go with them and add those new words and those new labels, as you say, to the feelings. And also, I guess what you're saying is, and I think this is a really powerful reminder, that any emotion is okay. That you can feel however you want to feel. It's what you do about it that, sometimes becomes problematic. So to let boys, empower boys to say how they feel and listen to them, instead of saying, oh, that's rubbish, or the whole boys don't cry narrative, or whatever.
It relates to girls too. Like we're taught, like we've got the lesson that we need to compete with other girls to feel valid, but then we feel ashamed when we're jealous. It's like, how is that? Like,
how can we win? Yes.
True for us.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, it is okay to feel jealous. It is okay to feel hurt or angry. Those are all natural human emotions. Then what you choose to do with it that matters.
Yeah. I really love that. Thank you for articulating that distinction. And you're right, it is. We sometimes set ourselves up for failure, don't we? Because we do half the job and then we think, but I'm not supposed to be jealous, but I feel jealous. Am I not allowed to say I feel jealous? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, jealousy is an interesting one, because, I often say to my girls, so that just shows you what you want, and isn't that a great message that, and even if it's something simple, like, I wish I had those shoes, or I wish that just shows you that there's something that you want that's like that. So, we don't have to hate the person who has it. We can take that as feedback for ourselves, that, oh, that's something that I'd like to be able to do, or maybe I'll work towards that, or something like that.
I also really encourage my girls to find the good feeling in celebrating other people's success. So even if it's something that you want, like, yeah, you might feel jealous and upset, but you can also, it feels good to support someone else. So I encourage them to go and congratulate them. Go and tell
Mm.
them it's a job well done. And then you get to feel good too.
Yeah. Is it fair to say to kids that sometimes two things can be true at once?
Yeah.
That you can go and say, congratulations, you know, I didn't I didn't get the award, or I wasn't chosen for class captain. I'm disappointed about that. But it is also true that I can be happy for the person who did get it. And also, when I say congratulations, I get some nice feedback because I've done the right thing.
And I think this is particularly important for boys and helping. If we want
Hmm.
to keep the little boys to continue to help as they grow into adulthood, which is
Yes.
critical for their mental health,
Hmm.
we need to point out to them, doesn't it feel good when you help someone?
Mm.
Like get them to notice the good feeling so they want to
Mm.
keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Because I
love
had
it.
a boy, it broke my heart. He was probably 10 or 11, and he said, helping is for chicks and losers.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, but what he did is he just articulated the message in our culture that is given to boys.
Mm. Oh, poor kid, but poor boys, if that's how they're being set up.
Yeah,
And poor us as a community, because, we're all worse off if they believe that.
yeah,
Yeah. And
really, really
the
bad.
final piece of that I think we probably need to break down is that the type of helping that's acceptable. So, we've used the sausage sizzle example. Often it's kind of the manly jobs, and it's the working bee and whatever. And then, if you see the man, I know at my kids' school, Mother's Day stall, this always drives me nuts how there'll be one dad and then everyone makes such a fuss over the dad.
Yeah,
And there's
I swear
25 mums,
and they've been up all night cutting salads or whatever.
but
Yeah,
yet the dad, oh, thank you so much for giving up the time. So even that, but then we're by thanking that man with more
yeah,
vigor than we're thanking the mums, then we're just reinforcing that, to
yeah,
ourselves and to him by doing that. So, sometimes it's helping, yes, in general, but it also needs to be the kind of helping that we need to kind of break the
exactly.
stereotype.
My husband and I, we joke it and we call it penis points.
Right,
All the extra
yeah,
points the men
for
get
having a
for
penis.
helping because they have a penis. Like it's just
Yeah, I love it.
expected of women, right? And
Yeah, I
because
love it.
our time is the default is our time isn't valuable and men's
Mm,
time is.
mm.
Which is why the
Oh,
school so often calls the mum and not the dad because the dad's busy
yeah,
working.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
we're
know.
not.
You're calling my office number,
Yeah.
when you call with my child sick. Yeah. Wow. Um, my goodness, Kasey, this is gold. I'm gaining so much from this conversation. Let's talk more about your expertise, even though it's been beautifully woven through the first few questions. Why is the habit of competition, and particularly this competition among girls, not helpful? What results when we have a habit of competing against other girls and women?
The really important thing about competition is understanding the motivation behind the competition.
Okay.
And so when we compete because we need to be better than someone else or to be seen to be better than someone else, that competition is unhealthy
Mhm.
because it's external, because it means we are always relying on someone else's inferiority to feel good about ourselves.
Right.
And that just sets us up for anxiety because sooner or later someone's going to come along who's better than you, and then how are you going to feel? So the competition that we need to be nurturing within ourselves and within our children is, I want to do well because I want to do well, right? Not because I have to be better than someone else.
Right.
And if your motivation for competition is self-mastery
Yes.
and the enjoyment of self-improvement, then you always get to feel good about yourself, not just when you're trampling on someone else.
Right. And is it important then to point out that feeling of getting better at something to our children while it's happening so that they learn that as the lesson rather than you beat the other person that you were doing the thing against?
Yes. And so because we teach the opposite, we teach
Mm,
toxic competition all the
yes.
time. And the way
Yes.
we do that is focusing on the outcome.
Mm,
Well done, you won.
mm,
Well done, you shot that many goals more
mm,
than the other kids. And I found myself doing it. I was so horrified. It was my first daughter. She'd come out and she'd done a very first spelling test in grade
Mm-hmm.
one. And
Mm-hmm.
she told me what she got. And I said, "Oh, that's great. What did Sarah get?" And I thought, "Oh my God,
You did that,
I just
yeah.
taught her that her mark is only good if it's better than someone else's."
Yeah, or that it fits in a continuum of other people.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we make a conscious effort to focus our praise on
Mm,
the process of learning, the
mm,
process of struggling and then getting back up. Or
mm,
so when my daughter's in year 10 now,
mm-hmm.
and we tell her, "I have no interest in what mark you get. What I care about is that you try, that you're
Mm-hmm.
curious, that when you don't understand something, you go and find
You
out."
seek
That's
help.
what I
Yes.
care about.
Yes.
And it's really interesting because parents think that they have to really tighten the screws and talk about marks to
Mm,
motivate their kids.
yeah.
It is the opposite. If
Mm,
you want your kids to get good marks, stop talking about marks. Because often, again, marks are external. Sure, you
mm,
can work really hard and you can increase your chances of getting the
mm,
mark you want,
mm,
but you
mm,
can't guarantee it. Whereas if
mm,
you focus on the process of learning, then your child and you, if you do it, can succeed every single day.
mm. Yeah. I think that'd be challenging for a lot of parents. I think,
Yeah.
there is an ingrained, particularly in certain societies and certain kind of school cultures where, ATARs are everything and, marks are everything. And we're kind of, conditioned to think that the number represents the effort and that, we also celebrate, we also only publish the 95 plus ATARs. We only, ever have the news reports about, the weird twins who got exactly the same ATAR, but it has to be 99.93. We don't get the kids who got in the 70s and the 50s and the
Yeah.
60s on the news.
But then
Um,
it's important to think about there's no follow-up story. Like
mm,
6 months later, no one cares.
no one cares.
And so you really set your kid up to fail if you have
Mm,
created their identity on getting a number that then
mm,
no one cares about.
yeah,
Who are they once no one cares what they got?
it's so true.
And
It's
so I
so
say this
true.
to my girls, like I have a Wikipedia page. There's a lot of information out there online about me. You can find out where I grew up. You can find out my net worth. It's not correct, but there's all sorts of things you can find about me. But
Yes.
nowhere can you find my ATAR.
No.
And that is because it doesn't matter.
And also, the other message there is that, particularly our kids now, they will have, I don't know what the most recent statistic is, but like 13 or 14 job changes when our generation and generations before got the gold watch for staying in the one career for 45
Yeah.
years, with the loyalty points. So actually, it's about opening the next door because the next door will come after that one and the next door will come after that one. And life changes more than you can ever imagine when you're a teenager. So yeah, I think that's yeah, the reason I asked the question about giving the children the tools and the feedback while they're young to focus on and emphasize and highlight the feeling of self-mastery is because I think it, and it's interesting you've used the year 10 example. Sometimes I think the horse is bolted by the time we realize how important it is to give those messages because all of a sudden marks are important, but we haven't laid the groundwork for a different way of thinking about things. And I've been thinking about this with myself. I only launched this podcast in December. And whenever somebody asks me how it's going, and you would understand, I get analytics on it every week. I see who's listening, where they're listening from. I could absolutely pin my worth on the numbers. Oh, why didn't that episode track as well as that episode? Why am I getting more in that age demographic? Well, what, and panic about that.
Yeah.
The first thing I'm saying to everyone, and truly it's not conscious, but I think it is helpful, I'm having so much fun. And that is true. That is absolutely the truth. So when people say, how's it going? I say, I could not have imagined how much I would enjoy this.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't hurt that my girls are around when I say that to people because sometimes the pursuit of feeling good is the biggest reward of all. And then the things that follow are, I probably feel good because I'm in my zone of quote unquote genius. I'm highly engaged. I'm getting better. I can feel myself improving. I'm, learning lessons. I'm, tweaking as I go. That's success for me. And it's irrespective of where it is on the charts or, how I've gone against other people. So, yeah, I think what a powerful message.
It actually really worries me that our kids are learning to such an extreme extent that everything is about an external measure
Mm,
and there is no intrinsic worth to anything.
mm,
Like they're not learning for the joy of learning.
no,
They're learning to get a mark that's
yeah,
going to appear in an email at the end of year 12.
yeah. It's really, sometimes I feel really, I'm a teacher, my husband's a school principal. I feel lucky that I'm able to interrogate that, often and say, how hard you studied for that maths test? Those study skills are going to put you in such good stead for when you need to focus and for when, and regardless of the subject, regardless of whether it's school or not school, the skills that you're learning while you're doing that, that's the important stuff, and being able to know, oh, I need a break now. Oh, I should have had more water. I should maybe I'm better off in the morning. So these kind of very kind of self-managing skills are what we want our kids to be able to get. But you're right, that isn't probably the norm, because we give them a mark, they get a score, they get ranked against other people. And, then we can extend that to social media. How many likes did I get on my photo? How many people turned up to my party? There are, numerical measures of our worth all day, every day. So, yeah, I really do take that point.
If you rely on that, you will never be enough.
Mm. Yeah, because what is the number?
Yeah.
What is enough?
And it keeps moving. Like I did that with myself when my first book. So I would be enough when I wrote a whole book.
Right.
And then I wasn't enough. Then I'd be enough when I got it published. Then I wasn't enough. Then I would be enough when it was in a bookstore. Still wasn't. I'd be enough when it was a bestseller. Still wasn't. And it just went on and on and on. And then my second book came out and it completely bombed.
Right.
Oh, no,
I'm really not enough.
I'm really not enough. Yeah. So that's why I really had to learn that I'm doing this because I love it and it fills my bucket. And that's what matters to me.
Yeah.
I'm writing without seeking permission or approval or validation.
Yeah. And I think someone like me that's an academic and is, governed by, as you say, edits and how many people read the article and whatever, I think that would have to be one of the joys of this podcast is that it's just fun, and actually who cares? Because, it's so opposite to that kind of dog eat dog, methodology that we've all been raised in. So, yeah, I love it. I love it.
People probably won't believe me, but I just want to say it to those parents who are freaking out about ATAR, because I see it, because my daughter's in year 10 and her friends are already stressed about a number that is going to appear in 3 years' time.
Yes,
they are going to go through the next 3 years of their life, their childhood that they cannot get back, in an absolute fog of anxiety because they're worried about a number. If your child does not get the number that they want, you can fix that within 6 to 12 months, right? You can go to uni, transfer into something else. My brother didn't get the number that he wanted to get into medicine, and he is now one of the most senior anaesthetists in Canada. Like, there are so many pathways for where our kids want to go. And if they don't get the number, you can fix it in a short period of time. But if your child gets to the end of year 12 and they are suffering from anxiety, depression, or self-harm or an eating disorder, then that takes a lot longer to fix.
Oh my goodness, it's such a powerful message. And I just, because we've gone down this path, I think, you've got that wonderful example of your brother, and that's a real life example. Listeners might not know I am actually a lecturer at Melbourne University. I cannot tell you how true exactly that statement is. If you don't get what you want when you're 17 years old, for God's sake, who even knows where they want to be at 17 years old? If yes, it is a matter of trying something else, doing a year bridging course, doing something more general, and then coming back over. It will work out if it is supposed to work out. So, yeah, and that message that our mental health is not easily put back together in the way that 6 months of a uni degree that happens to be at a different uni than the one that you'd first written down as your first preference. None of that matters. It's a drop in the ocean. And even we often say, of course, that's easy to say when we're in our 40s and looking back at these young people. No, you'll realize in a few months it won't matter. It will truly, things will flip. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for making that, that really important distinction. And I'm happy to be able to back it up with thousands of kids worth of evidence from
Yes.
from my own experience.
Wander your child's childhood because of a number that is only current for a few months.
If that.
Yeah.
Truly, if that. And in all the ways that we conceptualize success in this conversation, the number has to be one of about 100. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Now, let's talk finally about female friendships. Now, they are a life force.
Yep.
But what habits, Kasey, what behaviors and tendencies inside female friendships prevent us from building and maintaining these life-saving friendships?
Great question, Bree. Love this topic. The first one is what we've already talked about, competition. You can't be friends with someone if you've got to be better than her to feel okay about yourself.
Yeah.
So if you really want a friend, and you should want one because all the indicators show that we need it for a good life and a long life, we need to come to terms with the kind of motivation we have for being competitive.
Right.
Make it internal, make it about self-mastery, not about being better than someone else. The other habit that is taught to good girls is people pleasing, right? So we project to the world and to other women what we think they want to see in us. And so, for example, I used to walk into a party and instead of thinking, will I like them? I would think, will they like me?
Yes.
And so what I was doing was trying to work out what version of me I needed to show for people to like. Now, the penny dropped on this when I was at a friendship skills course with my daughter when she was 7. And the teacher was talking to the kids about friendship only happens between two people who are being themselves. You like them for who they are and they like you for how you are. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't let anyone see me as who I am. Like, how can whatever relationship I form with people, it's not friendship because I don't give them anything authentic to connect with. And so that was a massive realization for me quite a few years ago now that I need to give friendship a chance. And the way I do that is by having the courage to be me. And I tell you, Brie, it really works. I am so blessed with the most wonderful friends who like me for me and I like them for them.
And less is more, because more of those authentic friendships where you're able to show up as yourself. I think you learn this when you get older, don't you? It's not about the quantity, because if you're not being yourself in those friendships. Yeah, I really connect with that. I had a friend, we've fallen out of touch now. Nothing went wrong, but ships, life happens. And I would often find out from other people or other sources that there were really significant things happening in her life that she hadn't shared with me. And I felt confronted by that and I made it about myself. What am I doing to not make her feel safe enough to share these things? But actually, what you've just said, it was about her not being herself in front of me, then that wouldn't let me in. And obviously, so that, the teacher in your 7-year-old's friendship skills session, it's hilarious that we learn these things as adults when they're actually pitched at kids. But it's a really important one, isn't it? It is that very reciprocal, both people showing up, as their authentic self, that is required of a real friendship.
Yeah. And the other thing is we need to prioritize friendship. And often we're taught that we do all the important things first. And then if you get round to it, you get to friendship.
Yeah. Friendship
is one of the important things. And if we want friendship, we have to prioritize
invest in
friendship.
It. Yeah. Oh, goodness. And it's so true, isn't it? Because whenever you get home from a dinner with your girlfriends, when it finally happens and you can finally get to the stage where everybody feels like they've got their kids organized and that, it's at a time when everybody's, partners are able to be home to look after the children, for example, if that's the sort of friendship group that we're talking about, my goodness, your cup is overflowing when you get into bed after that dinner, and the smile on your face. And what's the first thing you think? Why don't I do that more?
Yeah.
Because these people make me feel like myself and the best version of myself. And yeah, what a great reminder. And as you say, it needs to be alongside all of our other, selves and our other responsibilities, not when everything else is done
That's right.
and left over and what we can fit in. And it's also the first thing that we cancel on for that reason, isn't it? We don't cancel on things for our kids, or we don't cancel on things for work, but we'll cancel the dinner with friends or
we don't cancel things that we think are important.
Yeah.
Friendship is important.
Yeah. For so many reasons. Yeah. And if and I like in your work that you talk about it being life affirming, life saving.
Yes. We all need at least one person that we can call at 2:00 in the morning when our life turns to shit. It's, it's coming for all of us.
It's coming. And also, what a gift. What a gift when you're that for somebody else.
Yep.
Like, nothing makes me feel better than when somebody asks me a favor because they are really needing my help. It's a real privilege when a good friend says, it's the middle of the night, something's happened, I need your help. Or, can you do the school run? I've been called into the hospital with a sick parent or whatever. If I can, I will. And I am so happy to do it because there's a connection there that person feels safe enough to let their guard down and ask for the help. So, yeah.
One of the kindest things we can ever say to someone is, I'll put the kettle on. Because that means I am giving you the most precious resource I have, my time.
My time.
And I'm giving it to you.
Yeah. Yeah, particularly if you're a tea drinker like me, and that's, the way I love to connect with friends is over a great cup of tea. Yeah, wow, that's wonderful. Kasey, I've taken up so much of your time. We had 1 hour, and we've gone 1 hour and 17, but I could do another 2. I won't because, you're a busy woman. What's a final message, and how can we connect with your excellent work?
My final message is probably that if you suspect, if there is a quiet voice inside you that thinks that you deserve more, it's because you do. Right? I think good girls, we have been conditioned to be grateful, so damn grateful for the scraps. And if we want more than the scraps, no one's going to give them to us. There's no one coming along to say you deserve more. We have to take that for ourselves, and we are entitled to follow and pursue our own dreams and experiences and expectations rather than living and serving other people's dreams and expectations.
That's so empowering. So going back to something you said earlier, if there is a feeling of resentment, for example, it's probably because you feel you deserve more than what you're getting. You resent the burnt chop. You'd actually like to not have the burnt chop. You'd actually like your meat to be cooked medium like everybody else deserves their meat to be. So cook it medium and put it on your plate because nobody else is going to do it if you don't. So yeah, what a lovely...
We deserve that.
We deserve that. And, the final thing of that is not that that's what this conversation's about, but when we look after ourselves, everybody else is better off anyway, because, we're able to feel rested and, our cup is filled in the way that it needs to be. So, if you do need the motivation and you're still struggling to put yourself first, understand that putting yourself first will have that flow-on effect of everybody else's lives improving around you as well. Kasey, where can we connect with you? You're the author of 10 books, and tell us, where can we reach you?
On Instagram at Kasey Edwards Writer, and I will send you the links for the criticism card and for the emotions wheel.
Fantastic.
Actually, I'll also, because how we talked about the giraffe, I've got a very short 10-minute video to talk to kids about criticism and the giraffe. Download them because these strategies, they work. They are evidence-based. I'm not just making up things I reckon.
Yes.
They're really simple and they're really powerful. They're powerful for your kids, but they're also powerful for us as grown-ups too.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for that generosity, Kasey. And as you know, I'll always be at pains to say on this podcast, we are, it's called The Habit Nerd because, I'm a researcher and I am, all about evidence. So, but evidence doesn't go anywhere if we don't match it with practicality and where the rubber hits the road in our life. So these tools that you're giving us, yes, they're research based, but they're usable and, actionable in real life. And that's what is the beauty of your work, that you have done all of this really powerful research, but also you're applying it with your own children and, with your community over, so many years. So congratulations on your new book, and congratulations on the 10 in total and all of your excellent work. And just a huge thank you from me and from my audience for such generosity in our interview today.
Thanks, Bree. It's been such a delight talking to you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Habit Nerd. I hope you found some new inspiration, learned something new, or gained a fresh perspective. If you did enjoy the episode, I would be really grateful if you could please leave a 5-star review, as it helps the show get in the ears of new listeners, plus it should only take you 5 seconds. If you're keen for more tips and insights, then head over to Instagram and follow Habit Nerd.